Page 144, Perek Yud Aleph, Chapter 11, Geula Shlishit Ein La Hefsek, that the third redemption will not have an interruption. Korban Shlishi Lo Yeh, the third destruction will not be. If you look at the source sheet, you will see that there is no source here. That's because the statement Korban Shlishi Lo Yeh, that the third destruction will not be, is a statement that was made by Rav Herzog Zatzal. During the Second World War, when Rav Yitzhak Isaac Halevi Herzog was the chief rabbi of Palestine, he came to America for several reasons: medical treatments, to raise money for the Yishuv, and to talk to President Roosevelt and try and convince him to bomb the rail lines leading to concentration camps. And if you know your history of the Second World War, up to the Battle of El Alamein, Churchill said, you can say that we practically did not have a victory, and after El Alamein you can say we practically did not have a defeat. But this was before the Battle of El Alamein. Rommel was running across North Africa. The Yishuv in Eretz Yisrael was preparing what they called the Metzada plan, that the entire Yishuv would retreat to the Har Carmel region and have their last stand against Nazism there. And before the Battle of El Alamein, Herzog decided that he had to return to Eretz Yisrael. In his meeting with the American President Franklin Roosevelt, President Roosevelt suggested to Rav Herzog, along with the Rabbanim of Moetzes Gedolei Torah of Aguda and many other people as well, that he should say in the meantime in America, because of the great danger that was hanging over the land of Israel, Rav Herzog said in response that we have received as a tradition that there will only be two destructions. The third destruction will not occur. And therefore, he said it was completely safe to return to Eretz Yisrael, and he did return to Eretz Yisrael. Rav Herzog's statement here that we have a tradition that there are two destructions and there will not be a third destruction, all begins with many of the concepts that we've been learning about what are the signs of the beginning of the Geula and so on, as well as various things that we will see in Tanakh, that Yeshayahu, for instance, talks about two destructions and he does not talk about a third. So let us now turn and look at the various sources from which we can see where Rav Herzog's statement came from. But before we go on, I'd like to have one more thing about Rav Herzog. When he and Rav Uziel wrote the Tefillah L'Shlom HaMedina, the very beginning of the state, and they included in it Reshit Tzmichat Geulatena, the beginning of the flowering of our redemption, they were challenged, Rav Herzog was challenged, by Rav Charlap, who at the time was the Rosh Yeshiva of Merkaz Harav, asking how could he know that it was Reshit Tzmichat Geulatena. And he quoted the Gemara from Sanhedrin that we saw a while ago, that the sign, the absolute sign of the coming redemption, is the fruit trees have begun to give their fruit. And so because that has already happened now, that this stage of Jewish independence has occurred, is clearly a step in the redemption. So we go to the words of Chazal. In the Mechiltav de Rabbi Yishmael, Parshas B'Shalach, Masechta Deshira Aleph, source 1, we read as follows. Eser Shirot Hein. There are 10 songs, and now we are going to skip a long section where the Mechilta identifies what these 10 Shirot are, and it goes through 9 of them that are found in our written Tanakh, and Hasirit La'atid Lavo. And the 10th song is for the future to come. Shenamaris, it says, Shir Lashem Shir Chadash, sing to God a new song, Tilato Miktzei Haaretz, his praise from the ends of the earth. Pasuk in Yeshayahu Membeis. Pasuk Yud. Kol Hashiros Sha'avru Kruos B'Lashon Nekeva, all of the previous songs that have been sung were all in the feminine. Kshem She'et Nekeva Yoledes, just like the female gives birth, Kach Hatruos Sha'avru Hayu Achreichem Shibud. So too the salvation, it also gives birth to later enslavement, later exile. But the final salvation will not have any enslavement, will not have any exile after it. Therefore it will be called in the masculine, meaning after it there will be nothing else. If there is another generation, so to speak, later, then you would say it's feminine in nature, because it can give birth. If this is the end of the line, whether good or bad, then it's Lashon Zachar, then it's masculine. Shnamar, Shaluna U'u Im Yoled Zachar. Ask, please, and see if a male was given birth to. Umadua Re'iti Kol Gever Yadav Al Chalatzav Ki Yoleda. And why do I see that every man, his hands are in his thighs like a woman giving birth? Pasuk from Yirmiyah. Perek Lamed, Pasuk Vav. Shekashem sha'azachar enu yoled, just like the male cannot give birth. Ken hatshua ha'atida lavo lo yeh acharecha shibud. So too, the future salvation will not give birth, so to speak, after it to an exile, to an enslavement. Shnamaris, it says, Yisrael noshaba Hashem shuat olamim. Israel is saved, or will have been saved by God, an eternal salvation. Lo tevoshu lo tekalmu ad olam me'ad. She will not be embarrassed, she will not be discomforted for all of eternity. Yeshayahu Mem Hey Zion 45:17. In order to understand the Mechilta at a little better, let the words of Tosfos and Pesachim can help us. As Tosfos says there, source 2, Tahachi Tanya b'Mechilta. This is what we taught in the Mechilta. Kol hashirot lashon nekeva chutz mishirat dela'atid delashon zachar. All of the songs are in the masculine except for the future song that Mashiach sings that is in the male. Kolomar, that is to say, Shan nekeva yesh la tsar leida. The female has pain of birth. Af kol hanisim yesh acharehem tsar. All miracles have after them pain. Chutz mila'atid, except in the future, she'ein achareha tsar, that there will be no pain after it. All redemptions have been compared to the feminine, to the woman, that she has the birth pangs, and that after the birth there is still pain and difficulties. When you see a woman nursing immediately after she's given birth, most women forget this, but it actually creates a hormonal reaction that tightens the womb, and that to bring the womb back into its original state, and that gives them some pain. Kach gam ha'geulot hakodmot haya churban v'tzar la'acharehem. All our previous redemptions, and if you want to talk about the various salvations, the many salvations that occurred different times during the times of the kings, during the times before that, during the times of Shoftim, one Shofet might save Israel and then rule over it for 40 years or so. But immediately after he died, then they again fall into the hands of their enemies. But the future redemption is compared to the male, that he doesn't have pain afterwards, and there will not be another destruction. Similarly, the Chazal teaches Midrash Tehillim on Kuf Yud Chet Kaf Beit. This is the day that God made. We should be happy and rejoice in it. Kol ha'geulot she'avru al Yisrael, all the redemptions for which Israel has passed through, yesh achareim shibud, afterwards there is enslavement. Aval mikan ve'elech, but from now on, ein achareim shibud, there will be no more enslavement after the next redemption. In chapter 121 of Tehillim, Chazal are comparing the language of the psalm enters Shir Lamalot, a song to ascents, as opposed to all of the other that are Shir Hamalot. There are 15 psalms, 14 psalms that start Shir Hamalot and one that starts Shir Lamalot, and it's a run of 15 in a row. There are many things that these are compared to. You'll find that there are 15 steps in Dayenu, there are 15 steps in the Mikdash leading from the Ezras Nashim to the Ezras Yisrael and so on. These 15 psalms are always viewed as one unit of 15. So why is there the change between the standard Shir Hamalot and in Psalm 121, Shir Lamalot? So source 4, David Amar, Shir Lamalot. Here, in this psalm, David HaMelech said, Shir Lamalot. Mishnata aleinu malazu. Once we have been given this mala, this advantage, ein anu yordin, we will not go down from this point. Mishiyoshienu mimalchus Esav. Once we have been saved from the dominion of Esav, which is viewed as the exile of Rome, Shuv ein anu yordim od l'shibud malchut. We will never again be reduced to enslavement of the people, to another enslavement. Chazal speak about 4 exiles. There is of course, Egypt, Bavel, Babylonia, Madai, Persia, the Medes, Yavan, Edom, Greece, and Rome. And Malchut Edom, the kingdom of Edom, is Edom. As it says in Bereshit Lamed Vav Aleph, Esav hu Edom. Esav is Edom. And they are the people that have ruled the world since the destruction of the Second Temple. And this is the last dominion that will rule over us. In the Psikta Rabati, we see this several times, this idea. Source 6 is the first one, Psikta Dalet, Ot Beit. Ubenavi hela Hashem et Yisrael Mitzrayim, and with a prophet, God brought Israel out of Egypt. Say Moshe. This is Moshe Rabbeinu. It's the pasuk in Hosea. Uvenavi nishmar, and with the prophet he will be guarded. Zay Eliyahu. This is Eliyahu. The Psikta continues. Tamotzei shnei nevim amdu Yisrael mishivto shel Levi. We see throughout all of Tanakh there are only 2 prophets that Israel had that came from the tribe of Levi. Moshe Rishon, Moshe Rabbeinu was the first, Eliyahu Acharon, and Eliyahu was the last of them. V'shneihem golim Yisrael b'shlichut, and both of them redeem Israel as agents. Moshe galam Mitzrayim b'shlichut. Moshe redeemed them from Israel as an agent, as it says, V'ata lecha v'eshlecha el Paro, and now you go, and I will send you to Paro. So he's being sent as the agent of God that's in Exodus 3:10. The Eliyahu Latit Lavo B'Shlichut, and Eliyahu in the future will redeem Israel as an agent. Hinei Anochi Shaleach Lechem Es Eliyah Hanavi in Malachim chapter 3, verse 23. That you see that Eliyahu is sent as an agent to redeem the Jews in the end. Moshe Galami Mitzrayim Tchila, Moshe redeemed them first from Egypt. Od lo chazru v'nishtabdu b'Mitzrayim, and after that they were never again enslaved to Egypt. Eliyahu k'shiyig'al otam min harivit min Edom, and Eliyahu, when he redeems them from the fourth exile from Edom, od einam chozrim u'mishtabdim ela tshuat olamim, they will not go back and be enslaved again, but it will be an eternal salvation. Another place in the Psikta, Psikta Lamed Zayin, 37, letter number 2. V'lo k'geula rishona kach geula achrona. The first redemption, meaning from Egypt, will not be the same as the final redemption from Edom. Ki geula rishona haya lechem tsar v'shibud malchiot achareha. Because the first redemption had after it pain and enslavement of other kingdoms after it. Aval gula achrona, but the final redemption, ein lechem tsar v'shibud malchiot achareha. But after it there will not be any pain or enslavement. There is another psikta that relates to the prophecy of Yeshayahu. That is the last haftorah. It comes from the last haftorah of the Shivat Nechemta, of the 7 haftorahs of consolation that run between Tisha B'Av and Rosh Hashanah. And it's connected with this pasuk from Yeshayahu, from chapter 61, verse 10. So asis b'Hashem, thus I will surely rejoice in God. Tegel nafshi be'elokai, my soul is happy in my God. Kil bilshani bigdei yesha, he has dressed me in the garments of salvation. Me'il tzedakah yateni, he wraps me in a cloak of righteousness. Kachatan yechahein pa'er, like the groom that embodies beauty. V'kakala tu'dei keleha, and the bride who puts on her jewelry. So based upon this, in the Psikta, at the end of 38, the Psikta says as follows: Lama nimshelu knesset Yisrael lakala. Why is the Jewish people compared to the bride? V'im nafshecha lomar, if you want to say, ma kala zu, kevan shekalu yemei simchata chozeret lechta. If you say that this bride, when she finishes the days of her rejoicing, she goes back to her work. Av knesset Yisrael yesh lam shibud acher geulata. So too, the Jewish people, after they will be enslaved after they are redeemed. Talmud Lomar, it says, Uva l'tzion barina v'simchat olam al rosha. She comes to Zion in song, and eternal happiness will be on her head. V'nasu yagon va'anacha, and sighs and krechsen, I don't know a better translation of anacha other than the Yiddish, will flee. This, of course, phrase is used in several of the Smirot. V'nasu yagon v'anacha, that Shabbos drives out these things, and Shabbos, of course, is compared to Me'ein Olam Haba. It's a taste of the world to come. You could think, from what we've looked at, the Knesset Yisrael is like the bride, that after her wedding ceremony, her Sheva Brachos and so on, she goes back to the normal work that she has always been doing. So to Israel, after they've been redeemed, they'll have a period of redemption, of rejoicing with God, and then they'll go back to their normal, or what has been the normal state of the Jewish people over most of its history of being exiled in one way or another. Therefore, the Navi has to tell us that it's simchat olam, that's an eternal happiness, that the Sheva brachas, so to speak, never end. So far we've been looking at the Psikta Rabati. There is also a Psikta de Rav Kahana at the end of Psikta Yud Beit, where we find the same idea. This is source 10. Bolam hazeh nigalu Yisrael miMitzrayim v'nishtabdu b'Bavel. In this world, Israel was redeemed from Egypt and then became enslaved to Babel. MiBavel l'madai, and after the enslavement to Babylon, we were passed over to the Medes or the Persians, MiBadai l'Yavan, and from the Medes or Persians to the Greeks, MiYavan l'Edom, and from the Greeks to the Edom. MiEdom HaKadosh Baruch Hu yigalotam v'lo yishtabdu od. And from Edom, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, will redeem them, and they will not be enslaved again. In the Maris it says, Yisrael no shaba Hashem shuat olamim, lo tavoshu v'do tikalmu ad olmei ad. Israel will be saved by God in eternal salvation. They will not be embarrassed. They will not be, their faces will not redden, also in embarrassment, for all eternity. Pasuk from Yeshayahu 45:17. Also, the Midrash Techuma in Parshas Noach, it's either letter number 11 or 17, depending upon which Midrash Techuma you're looking at. It varies where it is found in the Midrash. B'nai Yerushalayim Hashem. I'm sorry, I didn't put this source up. I'm not sure why. B'nai Yerushalayim Hashem. Hashem builds Yerushalayim. Nitchei Yisrael yikanes. The scattered ones of Israel will be gathered. Amr Yisrael Livnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Israel said before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shalom, Master of the world. Lo kvar nivneit Yerushalayim v'charva. Has not Jerusalem already been built and then destroyed? Amar lehem. He said to them, Al yidei avonotechem charva v'gilitem mitocha. It is because of your sins that it was destroyed and you were exiled from it. Aval la'atid lavo ani bonei ota. But in the future I will build it. Ve'enu hores ota le'olam. And I will not allow it to be destroyed again. This is a very interesting statement in the Tanchuma, because there's a lot to it that is hinted at that is not clearly said yet. It seems that what the Midrash is hinting at is the fact that Israel merited redemption in the first times it was redeemed. And therefore when that merit, which caused the redemption, was then lost, therefore the redemption was lost and exile was the result. Whereas here the Midrash Tanchuma is saying that because God is causing it without the merit of the Jewish people, and therefore it's God's action, and God's action lo yenachem, he never regrets anything that he did, and therefore it cannot have an exile after it. There is a Zohar, which is similar. Nishba HaKadosh Baruch Hu livnot Yerushalayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu swore that he would build Jerusalem. V'nishba shelo tishbe od Knesset Yisrael. And he also swore that Israel would not be exiled again. v'nishba shelo yehares binyan Yerushalayim. And he swore that Jerusalem would not be destroyed. In Bereshit Rabbah, we find, in relations to the words of Yaakov Vinu, Va'ani kasher shekalti, and I, if I am childless, I am childless. When Yaakov is attempting to send Binyamin to Egypt with his brothers, Va'ani kasher shekalti, and source 11, and I, when I if I will be childless, b'chorban rishon shekalti, b'chorban sheni. Excuse me, let me read this again. V'ani sheker shekalti, and I, when I will be childless, b'chorban rishon. This is the first destruction. Shekalti, I will be desolate, I will be childless. B'chorban sheni. This is the second destruction. Kasher shekalti b'chorban rishon u'v'sheni lo eshekol od. Like I have been childless after the first and second destruction, I will never be childless again. Meaning, he's saying, in this midrash, is that only in the first two times will there be a possibility of a destruction of the temple, but the temple will not be destroyed a third time. And the midrash Tanchuma says, in relationship to a pasuk in Zechariah, Midrash Tanchuma covers only on Chumash, but it often quotes from other places. The pasuk from Zechariah, Perek Yud Gimel, pasuk Chet, Vaya b'chol haaretz Hashem pi shnaim bo yikratu yigu'u ve'ashlishit yoter ba. And it will be in the land, affirms God, twice it will be cut off and broken, and the third one will not be again, meaning will not be broken. So the Midrash Tanchuma says on this, Ve'ashlishit yoter ba she'ein mityashvim ba'artzam ela be'ugula shlishit. That the third one, there will be nothing after it, more after it, that they will not live in their land except after the third redemption, meaning there will be no permanent living in the land except after the third redemption. Gula Rishona Zugulat Mitzrayim. The first one, the first redemption is the redemption from Egypt. Gula Shnia Zugula Ezra. The second redemption is the redemption of Ezra. It's interesting. The first time we're saying Egypt, and the second time we're saying Ezra, the one who redeemed us. Why don't we say the first time is Moshe and the second time is Ezra, or the first time is Egypt and the second one is Babel? I don't have an answer to this. Ve'ashlishit, and the third one, Ein lahefsek, will have no interruption after it. And also in Midrash Yilamdenu, the section called Likud Talmud Torah on Bereshit Kuf Lamed Dalet, Kshaya Yaakov b'tchum Haran. When Yaakov Avinu was in the area of Haran, Tala Einav v'ra'a Beit Hamikdash Banui v'Harav Banui. He saw, he had this prophecy of the temple being built, destroyed, and rebuilt. Thuras and Hedron, Belishas Gazis, Mitmeim, Mitaharim. He saw in his vision this Hedron in the chamber of hewn stone, that sometimes they would make things tameh and sometimes they would make some tahor. Osrin, Umatirin, they would prohibit things, they would allow things. V'ra Hagaliot, and he saw the exiles. V'shibut bana yad malchiot, he saw his children enslaved to the nations. V'ra Chazartan Ugulatan, he saw their return and their redemption. V'ra binyan shlishi she'enu charav la'olam b'samach, and he saw the building of the third temple that would not be destroyed forever, and he rejoiced. What's interesting about this midrash is, in a certain sense, it's borrowing from a Gemara in Menachot, when Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to receive the Torah. He sees God tying the crowns on the letters, and he asks, what's the meaning of this? And he's told to turn around, and he sees Rabbi Akiva in his base medrash, and the Gemara goes off there and says that he saw all the Torah that would ever be learned by the Jewish people. Here, Yaakov Vinu, when he's in Haran, he's in exile in Haran, which is establishing the physical basis of the Jewish people. He gets to see the physical things that are the definition of what the Jewish people are, the Mikdash, the Sanhedrin. Moshe Rabbeinu, which is, so to speak, the Matan Torah, is the spiritual basis of the Jewish people, gets to see the spiritual foundations of the Jewish people, the Torah. But they're two parallel, they're very interesting pieces of Agada and Medrash. And in connection, we see, if we continue in Dvarim, Perek Lamed Pasuk Hey, we have this connection between tshuva and geula, repentance and redemption. The pasuk says, "Ve'aviyecha," source 15, "Ve'aviyecha Hashem Elokecha el haaretz asher yirshu avotecha v'rishta," and the Lord your God will bring you to the land that you will yirshu avotecha, that your forefathers inherited, v'rishta, and you will inherit it. Ve'tivcha, and it will be good for you. V'hirbecha, and he will make you greater me'avotecha than your forefathers. So the Yerushalmi, when it is looking at this, it says as follows. From Masechet Shvit, Perek Vav, Halach Aleph. Avotecha, your forefathers, afal pi shenigalu, even though they were exiled, chazru v'nishtabtu, they went back and they were re-enslaved. Aval atem, but you, misheatem nigalim, once you are redeemed, ein atem mishtabdim, you will never again be enslaved. From all of these various sources, in the words of Chazal, the rabbis of the Mishnah and the Gemara, it's very clear that the process of redemption cannot be interrupted. It cannot be stopped. And once it is completed, it will never be reversed. That doesn't mean that there are not ups and downs in it. It just means that the process will not completely end. Thus far, we have looked at the sources from the Gemara, the times of the Gemara, primarily Midrashim and so on. The Rishonim and the Achronim also dealt in accepted this universally as being absolutely true of nature. We're going to take a little bit of look at, I think we'll do this next week, we'll look at the Rishonim and Achronim next week, but we'll see that the way that they view it is completely in line with the words of Chazal, that they're not bringing, that there is a debate among the earlier rabbis, that there are problems that have to be resolved, that there's more than one way of looking at it. This is pretty much a solid way of looking at it. It's also interesting if we go back for a minute to the Midrash Tanchuma and the Psik to the Rav Kahana that talks about all other redemptions are based upon your merit, and the final redemption is God's decision, right? That if the final redemption is not based upon merit but is based upon God's decision, perhaps it was inherently necessary for this to be primarily brought about by people that are not observant. Meaning, if it were brought about by tzaddikim, the opinion of Satmar, of Turi Kart, and so on, that redemption can only be brought about by tzaddikim, then if there is a failure in some way, if after a generation or 2 or 10 or whatever, 100, whatever it is, and they are not able to maintain that spiritual level, then you would of course expect to see that the result would be a spiritual collapse, and then it would have to bring in its wake exile, because the redemption was only in the merit of the spiritual level of the redemption that was of the generation that was redeemed. However, if God is doing it on his own, for his own reasons that have nothing to do with the merits of Klal Yisrael, the merits of Klal Yisrael may speed it up, but even without the merits of Klal Yisrael, God has said that he is going to redeem the Jewish people, then it is obvious that if the Jewish people becomes less or more meritorious, that has no effect upon the redemption, because it was God's unilateral decision to redeem at this point in time. There's a lot more to be said about this. In fact, in the future, we will have an entire chapter on the idea that the redemption happened through secular people. Chapter 13. We'll examine this in depth as to why and how, and whether it's a problem that redemption occurred through secular people. I thought it's important to note at this point that you have a seed or a kernel of this idea already in one of the sources that we have looked at.